Hi, welcome to episode 31 of the American Tributaries podcast, where to break out of the bubbles we've all been living in these last few years, we are using modern technology to explore the various currents of people in our great country, kind of like a 21st century Lewis and Clark journey. I'm your host, Michael Whidden, and thank you for joining me in this exploration of America. After the show, please consider following us or subscribing to the podcast on whatever platform you're using and giving a rating or a thumbs up to this particular episode. And if you've been enjoying these conversations on the show, please don't hesitate to let your friends and family know about American Tributaries podcast. Let's use social media to spread curiosity and understanding. Hey, before we start today's conversation, I'm proud to say that episode 31 is sponsored by American Tributaries Travel, which is the company that I started in June to take the spirit of this podcast and get it on the ground and get high schoolers in our country to visit other parts of the country. Our first trip will be from New York City to South Carolina via Amtrak, visiting Charleston, Columbia, and Greenville, departing February 18th, returning February 26th. For more details, you can check out AmericanTributaries.com. Okay. Oh, I'm absolutely delighted to have on the show Jonathan Lopes. Jonathan is an artist that uses a rather unconventional medium in the art world itself, but something that us everyday folks will find near and dear to our hearts, Legos. And his talent has also allowed him to travel all around the country and meet all sorts of people. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you doing? And could you share a bit of your story?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Doing very well. Currently living in San Diego and enjoying the weather out here. Yeah, my story is essentially, I've always been creative and always been an artist. I was raised just south of Boston, and I was involved in art in school throughout my formative years. Always, again, creative. I was a musician for a number of years in as a teenager and in the Boston area. And when I was 18, I moved to New York and joined a band in pursuit of a career in music. So music at that point was my creative outlet and my art, for example. Um, so I pursued a career in music for a number of years in New York, playing clubs with the band and making demo tapes and showcasing for record labels and all that. And after a number of years of doing that, the band just kind of broke up, and a number of people left the band, and it was a rock band. And finally, the lead singer and the front person decided to go back to school. So at that point, for a few years, I started looking for other bands and kind of fancied myself as a songwriter, and did that for a few years. Um, and then I got word that the Lego company was going to release building kits based on the Star Wars license. And this, at this point, I guess I give a time frame. I moved to New York in 1990, and by the time I got into Lego, was 1998. And that's, I believe, when the Lego company first started creating those Star Wars kits. So that piqued my interest in Lego. Lego was my main toy as a child. My younger brother and I would play with Lego for hours on end. And we didn't have a big collection. We had a bag full of maybe 2 or 3 thousand Lego pieces. We're talking back in the 1970s.
I
That we had.
remember those days. I remember the little figure that didn't even have the arm movable arms
Yeah,
yet.
exactly. Yep. We had those. I think we
Mhm.
had 2 or 3 of those figures, and my
Same.
little brother and I would always try to be the first to find them in the mix so we could play with those figures. So we, where was I? Yeah, so now we're in like 1998, and reading the Sunday New York Times, and I saw a little blurb about the Lego company attaining the license to create these Star Wars kits. Um, So that piqued my interest. And once the kits were released, I was working in Manhattan, in the Chelsea area. I was working on Fifth Avenue and 15th Street. And during lunch, I walked over to Toys R Us, which was at Union Square at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and bought an X-Wing fighter out of a Lego kit of the X-Wing fighter. And that was essentially my first Lego kit as an adult. And I took it home that night and built it in no time and really enjoyed where I think building that Lego kit brought me to the point in time. It just brought me back to those years of playing with Lego with my younger brother. Um, but I also really enjoyed the tactileness of the bricks, the feel of them. So I just continued to buy Lego kits and build them from the instructions. And from there, I started creating my own creations out of Lego bricks once I had amassed a small collection. And my first creations were really not all that elaborate. Um, Very simple. One of my first creations was a New York City street sweeper. Um, Being from New York, we're all very familiar with those, especially in the very early hours of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
The garbage truck and street sweeper ballet, I used to call it, living on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. Um, so yeah, my first creation out of Lego was a New York City street sweeper, and then I slowly graduated to other vehicles, um, dump trucks, fire trucks. After 9/11, that really brought me into a space where I had a renewed appreciation for first responders. So one of the topics that I focused on for a while was building New York City FDNY firehouses. So I did that for a while. And at this point in time, we're talking the early 2000s now. I would have considered myself a Lego hobbyist. I was working in book publishing as my career, an industry I love, and just doing Lego as my hobby in my apartment, just building in the evenings and on the weekends. And it just slowly over time turned into a much larger part of my life. At this point, music was taking a little bit of a backseat, and I wasn't playing music as much. And Lego just kind of took over as my creative outlet. And but again, still at the hobby level. Um, then came a time where living in New York, I lived there for 26 years, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but me and so many people in my of my friends, typical New Yorkers move quite frequently to new apartments. In that time, I think I lived in 12 different apartments in New York City. Um, and I was up for a move, and I had a choice between two apartments. And one was a small studio apartment on 28th Street in Manhattan, the West Side. And the other one was a top floor of a three-floor walk-up on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. Both were in the same price point. And in my mind, it would be, my mind was like, okay, if I take the studio apartment in Manhattan, um, I will pursue music. I will build a small recording studio, which doesn't take up much space, and really immerse myself into music as my creative outlet. And then I was alternately, if I took the Brooklyn apartment, which was a lot larger and had a huge front room, a 400 square foot front room, my mind was okay. If I take the Brooklyn apartment, I will pursue Lego as my creative outlet and have that front room be my studio because Lego takes up a little bit more space. And I wanted to build a model train layout entirely built out of Lego bricks, a realistic model train layout. Um, so after all that deliberation, I took the Brooklyn apartment, a decision I do not regret. I wouldn't have regretted the other one. I really don't look back with regret. I just look back as, I made a choice, a decision, and it led me to where I am today. And I lived in that apartment, I think, for about 8 or 10 years, with that front room being my Legos art studio, where I did create over those years two different model train layouts, including landscaping, that were entirely built out of Lego bricks.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and they got some media attention um, through a lot of blogs and whatnot in New York City. Gothamist, um, New York Daily News ran a spot, Brooklyn Eagle, a number of different. New York One ran a piece as well, PIX 11. So it got made some noise. And slowly after going viral for a few weeks, people started asking me to build things for them. And it happened slowly. And at this point in our timeline, I think we're about 2007, 2008, where people started contacting me here and there to build something for them. And over the years, that happened with more frequency. Um, People would hire me to create things for them. And I started participating in art exhibits. I dabbled in the Lego fan convention realm by just attending Lego fan conventions um, and doing a lot more commission work, work for hire. And then I was hired to be a resident artist in a Lego fan convention that travels the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and that happened in late 2014 with our first show in 2015 in Raleigh, North Carolina. The fan convention is called Brick Universe. I have been with them ever since, and we've done over 60 shows now since 2015, averaging about at our height, I think we did 13 in one year.
Wow.
Yeah, 2023 is looking pretty robust. We obviously had a pause during COVID, but yeah, it's really given me a ton of exposure for my work, and it's kind of served as a foundation for me to pursue art full time. So I'm very happy to say that about 3 years ago, I left my career to do this full time and be a full time artist, working within the medium of Lego bricks. So that's
Oh.
a bit of a long winded um, version of my story. Yeah.
That's really it's a living the dream. I think. I mean, there are many young kids who like play with Legos who probably wonder, like, where does it go from there? And there are probably lots of grown-ups who are thinking back to when they would play with their Legos, and think about like how you would actually be able to get paid to do that, to find a livelihood. So that kudos to you for figuring that out. Did you For me, I remember like I had been disconnected from Legos probably from the age of like 11 or so, or 12, until we had kids old enough to start playing with them. And what I found appealing that first time I got to like help with the set was how like meditative it was, and how like kind of calming it was to just, in the past I felt like when you were a kid you'd get frustrated not finding a piece, but I found like as an adult it was like, oh, this is wonderful because I can just tune everything else out, and my one quest here is to find that one antenna that I can't find or something.
Yeah, I think living in and working in New York City, it's can be a hectic environment, and it's not for everybody. It was certainly for me, and I loved it. But I think after a day working and after the commute home, just it was very therapeutic, and it just allowed me. I'm also very much an introvert, so it just allowed me to, while I'm building with Lego or looking for those two pieces that I need, um, allowed my mind to wander and sort through whatever I had on my mind for that time and that day. So yeah, very therapeutic, absolutely.
And it's interesting that the introversion that you had has now put you in a position where you are very extroverted.
Yes, that I was talking with my wife ahead of this podcast with some of the what I was feeling ahead of this, and I'm totally fine with it. But yeah, I it is quite a difference for me in my personality. I'm 100% an introvert, and when I do these Lego conventions, I am on site. The Brick Universe Lego convention that I do is very cool because they allow me to many Lego conventions allow people to um, Lego fans to come in and display one or two Lego creations that they created. Brick Universe being one of their resident artists, I have a full gallery of my work that I show. That's about 40 different sculptures, and I'm on site all day for meet and greet. So for those 6, 8, and sometimes 12 to 14-hour days, yeah, depending on how many sessions we do that are open to the public, some of them go 14 hours. I am on, and I am there smiling, and talking with people, chit chat, which is not my favorite thing in the world. Um, and literally, I'll have 1,000 people come up to me, or more than that, in one day. I'm either signing my book or just talking with them about the work I do, trying to inspire them and all that. And it is taxing. Um, Many of the Lego people that the other Lego artists that go out to dinner together in the evening as a large group, and at that point I am done. I'll take us, one or two people I can handle, and then I'm back at my hotel room, really trying to you know give myself some space.
Yeah.
So it's definitely I have to turn myself on for these events and for other public speaking events that I do, and it is definitely an effort.
Well, so far so good on the
Oh, thank you.
podcast. So, I mean, if I can ask, like, so as a Lego, as somebody who making your living is based on Lego,
Yep,
the way I'm thinking of this is that if you're working Brick Universe, you're working with them, so that's you're getting obviously compensated for helping them. You also are commissioned, so if you're a store, somebody's getting married, somebody just loves Legos and they want to have something made, they would reach out to you and say, "Hey, could you make this for me?" So that would be like a commission thing.
yep,
Is there Are there other streams? Do you make things on your own and then kind of put it out to be sold as if you were like an artist making paintings as well?
yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's you touched on two of the. I get this question quite frequently. A lot people are curious. Um, how do I draw an income? And it's basically like an artist. Um, So I do commission work. I do exhibits that I get hired for. I loan out and rent out my work as well. Custom work for people, and also original work as well that I sell
Mm.
at events. I also have a book that came out in 2019, New York
Ah.
City Brick by Brick. This was published with Abrams. They're a art book publisher in New York City. So that draw gave me some revenue back in, I think I started developing that in 2016, 2017. But yeah, it's been great. You know, being an artist and being self-employed, creative, it's a roller coaster. And at the end of the year, thus far, it's all worked out just fine. But now and then, especially during the early days of the pandemic, I was a little concerned. Travel, I can't travel, so how am I going to draw an income this year? Fortunately, I did have a nest egg that I had saved up prior to exiting my career. And then during that time in the early 2020, I got a big commission from a company in Germany, which helped pull me through for that year.
Well,
Um,
I apologize a bit for bringing something up as personal as the income, but I think that one of the perceptions that a lot of people can easily have is just like they see an artist, it sounds good, but like I think it's important to understand like there's a livelihood that has to happen as well behind this. So when somebody sees, it could be your work, but it really could be a painting or anything, and they're just like, well, I'll pay this much for it. There's a lot of work that goes into that end product that you're looking at, and it's important, I think, for people to understand how why it's being done. The notion of a starving artist isn't something I think anybody kind of chooses to do necessarily. You do it because you have to, until you get to the point where you're not a starving artist anymore.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Regarding the starving artist, we do it, or I speak for myself, right? Um, I do it because I have to. I have to create, or I become a very not nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like if I don't have a creative outlet, I get a little cranky. I need to be creating. But and Lego itself, people are Lego has a reputation for being an expensive product.
yeah,
So that's a lot of times where people's mind goes. But if I'm doing a commission piece that has 20,000 Lego bricks in it, um, the main cost component of that is not the Lego, it's my time.
yeah.
So you can only imagine how much Lego costs for 20,000 Lego pieces. If you can, wrap your head around that cost, my time is much more valuable while creating that. My time and experience. So the cost component. So people may look at a Lego creation that I've built and think, oh yeah, it's probably $300 worth of Lego, and they may be right. But if I'm selling that piece, I'm not selling it for $300 or $400 because my time and expertise and all my living expenses have to be accounted for as well.
Yeah.
Um, and it's very interesting as well, noting that the different areas. I lived in New York City and now I live in San Diego, and the perception of Lego as an art form is entirely different depending on what area you live in or your surroundings. Um, in New York, I remember this distinctly when I told people that Lego was my art form, and I was reluctant to tell them because thought people would look at me quizzically. And it was people were always like, "Oh, that's so cool," and then we just went on talking about art, like it was understood that Lego was my art form and generally speaking could be considered an art form and an art medium, which I absolutely consider Lego to be an artistic medium. It's a children's toy, yes, but for
So
me,
crayons, right, and painting. Yeah, but that
yeah,
it's really more universal. It's not about it being just for children. It's something that's universally, I guess, engageable.
yeah, absolutely. When we moved to San Diego, and I had these similar conversations with people, I wasn't prepared for the quizzical looks because I hadn't experienced that one bit in New York. Um, and it was just interesting. I had to readjust my thinking. And now I've kind of reverted to the space where people ask me what I do. I say, oh, I'm an artist. And, oh, what type of art do you do? Sculpture. It takes it a little bit longer to get the word Lego out of my mouth
Mm-hmm.
um,
Well,
here.
The thing I guess that I've found in when I was selling wine in particular is that to talk about something that people are unfamiliar with, you're going to always catch them off guard. So I always found like if I'm going to present a wine from a region that they never heard of or a grape they've never heard of, I always say like to me you have to market to the pushback. In other words, like in New York, you found you didn't get the kind of pushback that you have there, and really when you're in your new community in San Diego, that you're now like on the cutting edge. So like you're the one that's not all you have to be the proselytizer to not only just talk about show that what you do is good, but that it is artwork. So you're a pioneer. Which
Thank you.
and I don't mean that like pejoratively. I'm trying to do the same thing with education travel, but it's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
like you're trying to like you have to frame it in a way that makes sense because people are understandably so think of Legos from their childhood and they don't know about it in a different context, which is what you're really trying to create that context. So
Exactly. Yep. And that's what I certainly do at these Brick Universe events. We don't typically go into major cities with Brick Universe. We're typically going into the smaller cities.
why is
Like,
that?
what's that?
Why the smaller cities as opposed to the bigger cities?
I think there's a number of reasons. I don't do the scheduling myself. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just a hired gun, so to speak, for them. But I think we're going to. There is a major. I think the nation's largest Lego convention is in Chicago each year, and then there's a convention already in Seattle and also in the D.C. Washington D.C. area, and one in Philadelphia as well, that are considered to be major Lego fan conventions. Um, with Brick Universe, my understanding is we've gone to the smaller markets, and I think it's just a different market approach.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been to like Knoxville, Tennessee, Madison, Wisconsin, Raleigh, North Carolina, um, New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi, Oklahoma City, quite frequently, Tulsa. Um, we've I think stayed mostly east of the Mississippi so far. Um, and the family that runs Brick Universe is from Virginia, um, and with family history and maybe within their family from West Virginia and Texas, so they're basically based in the South. Um, so I think that might have some of the attraction to them to these cities. But it's really amazing because we're going to these cities and the events are packed. There's it was only during the height of the pandemic when there was a surge that we in COVID cases in one of the cities we were in that we had a light attendance. Other than that, the events have really, really had a strong turnout. So it's clearly something that is wanted and needed, and I really commend the Brick Universe team for finding these venues and these areas that really want something like this, like the Brick Universe convention, and the people of the areas have certainly come out and showed us that they want it and they're interested in what we do.
Now, I mean, one of the reasons why we were connected by our mutual friend Kirk Benshoff was, I think, because of this journey that you had to have. Because you grew up in Boston, you lived in New York City, and you're not mentioning those as being destinations, and you now live in like San Diego. So you're going to other cities that are at least unlike where you've been living most of your life. Like what has that been like? Did you have you found like I don't know big differences, big similarities? Like how has that kind of impacted your understanding of the country? I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely a thought in process, if you will, with me. Still sorting through it. Just living and growing up just south of Boston in a suburb, and moving to New York City was a quite a change for me. And then even moving within New York City, those 11 times from different neighborhoods was a quite
Oh, yeah.
and experience.
One subway line to another can change your life.
Absolutely. And each neighborhood has its different, distinct flavor and feel, and each borough has each distinct flavor and feel. And then moving from New York City to San Diego um, was just a huge culture difference as well. Um, so going to all these other cities, um, it's been a wonderful experience. You know, I am around a ton of people, a ton of different people that in different areas that I don't know that I would have normally gone to and visited. So it's just really been great, and it's what I see with the people. I think is that obviously there are maybe different values and different philosophies on life. Being from with me being from the Northeast, um, but my takeaway is that people are, we're just doing what we do the way we know how to do it um, in life, and wanting to get in through life and share experiences. For me, I think travel and being aware and visiting different places has just been a phenomenal experience for me, and just eye opening to, we're a huge country and we're a huge world as well, and I've been to the Far East a number of times, specifically China, Hong Kong, um, and there, you're there and there people just doing what they do, going to work, living their life, doing what they have to do to get through life, and laughing, and you know, um, just living life. And life is comprised of different things for different people. And I think the more, for me, the more I see that and experience that, the more understanding and better person I can become.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned like your overseas, like I guess experiences and how that impacts how you see things here. And like I know for me, in the when I was in wine for like the last 12 years, one of the countries like I got to know very well was Italy. But as I learned about Italy, I started realizing that it wasn't monolithic like Italy. Italy had lots of differences. Between towns, between regions, and I saw, I guess, how much variation there was just within one country that's actually not that big compared to America. And then when I saw that and then turned my eyes back to America, I was like, oh, that's why there are differences, is because that's what happens. Like you become a product of your region. And even though you could be like, well, they're Italian, that means so many different things, whether you're in Umbria or Alto Adige or in Val d'Aosta or Piedmont or Calabria or Sicily. And
Mhm.
why would I look at my own country and think that there's some monolithic point of view that's American? I mean, there's so many different ways to live the life, and I always say like there's certainly universal truths, but I think that maybe the pandemic was almost like kind of like the final straw, but it kind of was like, look, I've got to start looking, understanding that there are just other points of view that we need to be more, I guess, respectful of and understanding of, and to look for the commonalities. Like I think for you, you've got this great medium, Legos, that lets you kind of go into any community and talk about things that people have like affection for. And isn't
Mm.
that a far greater way to engage people than to find like, let's find the most divisive thing that
There
people
you
can argue
go.
about? In fact, that you could argue with your wife or your neighbors about. Let's start with that. Like that's the most, I think, the most idiotic way to engage people. And it's
Mm.
certainly, there's a realistic that people aren't all the same, but why start? There's no reason that you have to start with the negative or with the disagreeable. Why not start with things that people are passionate about and love, and start from that common basis before you start, if ever, getting into the things that people disagree with? I mean, it must be heartening for you to go from place to place and have people who are there who just probably like, it's probably like the signature moment of their year is to go to a brick universe.
It is, yeah. It's been fantastic, and again, just really, really eye opening to areas that I don't know that I would have gone to and otherwise. Now and then you do get a comment, um, but I understand the comments a little bit more. One specifically, I was showing the body of work that I was showing. I forget where the event was, but the body of work that I was showing was my New York City work, and I was talking with somebody who was very complimentary, appreciated the work and all that, and I told them I was from New York, and the conversation was great. And he said, "Yeah, I've never been to New York. It's a little too far north of the Mason-Dixon line for me." And I didn't know what that meant, within that context. I mean, I've heard of the Mason-Dixon line, but it's not something that that goes back to my schooling, I guess. So I literally went back to the hotel later and did some research on what all that may have meant. But the vast majority of conversations are just fabulous. And it's I kind of I want to feel like an ambassador, not only with Lego, trying to have Lego to be understood as an art form, but also an ambassador from my experience with traveling in general, um, wherever I may be,
Mm.
and just being in different areas of the country and the world. I have limited international travel, but some, but just I want to learn and grow from all these experiences and be a better, more understanding human, which
Was
which to me is an obligation.
yeah.
That's something that I need to do.
Was there, I guess, a city that especially like surprised you, or that I don't know, that's a particular favorite of yours for any particular reason?
Yes. There's one city we've gone to. They all have their aspects, of course,
Yeah.
that I really enjoy. Um, my preference, we've gone to some cities where the hotel is far away from the venue, so we need to take a car to the venue.
Mhm.
Those would be lower on my list. I'm definitely a city boy.
Understandable. Yeah.
I'm a city boy.
Yeah.
So the walkable cities, I really, really enjoy, where I can just take a 10 or 15-minute walk from the venue in a downtown area to the hotel. Sometimes the hotels and the venues are connected. That's fine too. Um, but I really like Knoxville, Tennessee, mostly for the walkability. Um, and the city I really enjoyed the most was Columbus, Ohio. It has architecturally, it really resonated with me. It has decaying and like old factories that are crumbling and falling down. Some of them have been rehabbed, keeping the outer shell of the factory, and they've turned it into condos. But obviously rehabbed everything. And it also has some new buildings and architecture that is phenomenal. It's quite walkable. Um, and it really struck with me. One of the things, getting back to Lego, just for context, that I try to create with Lego is urban grit. And that's one of the things within the Lego fan community and within my artwork. Something that I'm known for is creating gritty urban scenes from a shiny, happy bright colored plastic children's toy.
Huh.
So that's where I have an affinity for gritty urban settings, and Columbus is not all gritty. There are and grit is beautiful to me, but to a lot of people, I don't want to say Columbus is a gritty dump, for example. It's a beautiful city, you know.
It sounds aesthetically pleasing. It appeals to you, along with being a
Yes,
lovely city, and your aesthetics is towards the grit. Did you ever do the Gowanus Canal? That would be some a gritty scene, a gritty
that would
landscape
be
for you.
yeah, that would be really awesome. My studio was when I lived in Brooklyn. My art studio was on Ninth Street, right underneath the F train, right next to Lowe's.
Okay. Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
know where
Wow.
Lowe's is, yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, I was there obviously every day, and the Gowanus Canal, the Gowanus area. I was part of that art scene. So yeah, very familiar.
Yeah. Wow. Um, now, there's so many different directions to go. One of the things I was wondering is like, do you see like with your artwork, a lot of like what I feel like I see when I see the complicated pieces that if they're not done by you, I assume are done by people in your area of expertise. They're usually like replicating like the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, or other things. Is Lego art mostly kind of taking what we know and transforming it into Legos, or is there stuff that's kind of like I don't know created like I don't even know if it's the right word, but like sui generis, like just Lego for like something that can only be done with Legos.
Um, I think that I think Lego is it crosses everything. So you could create a building, you could create a spaceship, you could create something that pre-exists, replicate something out of Lego. But you can also do abstract art, and create your own sculptures, of which I've done. Basically, um, just taking my own idea and Legoing it,
Mhm.
creating it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If was that the question? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Like if you can create, like I mean, like either can you kind of take the Lego art form and then go like all like go Picasso or Dali on it, or just do something totally abstract.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. To me, anything can be done the within the Lego medium.
Uh-huh.
Like I mentioned my book earlier, which has showcases many of my New York City structures, but there's also a chapter in that book that is artistic renderings of New York City, um, flavored subjects, kind of like the High Line.
Uh-huh.
I did a version of the High Line that was a then and now version of the High Line. So it was looking down, looking westward on 23rd Street. And in the middle of 23rd Street is where I did the cut point. And to the southern part was High Line then. And the old gritty High Line with there's an old gas station that was there, and
Yep.
then like an abandoned lot right behind it back in the day. And then the northern side from the middle of 23rd Street was the High Line now, which was the park that it is, some more steel buildings and things like that. So there's definitely an artistic side to it. And that is only an example that um, I was basically replicating the High Line, but I took an artistic spin on it. But I've also done entirely full exhibits based on love. I started this in 2015 that are all just concepts that I came up with the underlying theme of love and the heart, the shape of the heart. And they're all varying concepts, all of my own ideas that started out as a sketch or a brain, just an idea that I had, that I then turned into a Lego sculpture. So yeah, to me, long story short, anything can be done with Lego.
Okay. I have to ask this: when I look at those the sculptures that are made, I especially when I have like the children and tell I'm terrified of them like running into it and knocking it over. Have you ever had a sculpture of yours be toppled and destroyed?
Um, I've By myself, yes.
Okay. Oh God.
Yeah, yeah. I was working in my Brooklyn studio, and um, I don't know if you've been to Red Hook, but behind the fairway, there used to be these trolley cars. I don't know
Yeah.
if
Oh yeah. It's still there.
they're
Yeah.
still there. Okay, I created one of those, and it came out really well. I was really happy with it, and I took a photo of it and texted it to my wife. And she said, "Oh, it looks great. Congrats." And then I literally dropped it on the floor in my studio. Yep, and I had to rebuild it. I still have it. It's on a shelf here, but that's my main the main one that happened. I've never had a huge, large scale sculpture get demolished by another person. I've had some shipping mishaps. I loaned out a few pieces to a gallery in Texas this past summer, and they shipped them back to me. And I haven't opened one of the boxes because I hear some rattling in
Mm.
there, and I'm a little reluctant to do it. And I glue my work together, but it still does. It still can get damaged in transit.
Despite the Lego Movie.
Yes, yep. Despite of the Lego Movie, despite of the glue, the kragl that I use, um, things happen.
But each
And
piece you glue together.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Hence the cost, right? So
Wow.
the time it takes to glue all my work together, each Lego piece, um, yeah, really adds to the cost. Now and then, if a client doesn't want it glued together, certainly I'll not glue it together for them. But if I'm creating a piece, it's my typical process would be to glue it together.
Wow. Um, what's your in a different like medium? What is your what is your feeling about like NFTs?
I don't know enough about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I don't know anything either, so that's
yeah,
why.
don't know enough. It's interesting. It came up. Something popped up in my Instagram feed late last week, and it had NFTs with it. I was like, oh, maybe I need to research some of that and see if it's something that's viable or not. And I just haven't put the time into doing that yet.
Yeah. No, I mean, like to me, like on the one hand, like talking with you, who actually is handling something like physical and tactile and whatever. On the one hand, like frankly, I get like almost revolted by the idea of like artwork that's like digital that it doesn't really exist but kind of exists. But then on the other hand, like when I think about like I guess like being like creating things, um, like there's I think part of the problem with it, I guess one of the consequences of like the internet and being able to like get things out there is that there's so many things created that everything almost gets devalued.
Hmm.
So while on the one hand it's like, well, it's great to have everybody with all these ideas and people making all these videos because they become so replicable that it loses value. So the idea of taking that digital creation and now not letting it be out there uncontrollable, maybe available to millions but only available to the one person that has the right to the NFT, I guess makes sense. And this may be the blind leading the blind in this conversation, but like it's just
Yeah.
something that to me, I'm just like I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around it. So I guess like I think you said before, like your I guess your journey around America is still like a work in progress. And I think that to me, that's almost like the healthy way of looking at anything is,
Hmm.
I mean, it's we can all have opinions. It's just a matter of whether or not you consider your opinion a final product or an eternal work in progress. And I guess my opinion on NFTs is definitely a work in progress. But I guess started with at least a little bit of skepticism.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know enough about it. And I'm just cribbing off of what you just mentioned. If you create a piece and then somebody else owns it, and they are the only ones that have the rights to it, I kind of want my work to be seen by as many people as possible. So yeah, I don't know enough. So if only one person has the rights to seeing the piece and the ownership of it, it kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Blind leading the blind here.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But that's what
but
I always say for me that this podcast is like real conversations, and I think that we have to be comfortable admitting like what we don't know and kind of like talking about it a little bit and then kind of like moving on.
yeah, no, I'm
But-
sure I'm going to do some research on a few topics after this conversation.
yeah,
So I'm grateful for that.
yeah, no. And then I guess um when you are out at these shows and meeting people, like what are the kind of like things people talk to you about? Is it the same thing? Is it all over the place? Are they asking you for advice, tips? Like what are those interactions like?
Yeah, the main question that I'm asked is how I transport my work from each venue. So I actually created a piece that shows exactly how I transport it, and I pack it up and transport it in big wooden shipping crates that have to be moved with a pallet jack. So I literally created a pallet jack out of Lego bricks. I created a Lego version of a shipping crate with one of my buildings inside it disassembled to give people a visual. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so, and that piece really gets a lot of great response. But so that's the main question I'm asked is how I transport my work. Back to your question, yeah, people, a lot of it, people do want to know how I monetize it and how I'm able to make a living. Um, people ask about process. And that's a tough one. People ask if I use CAD programs, programs to create my work. The answer is no. I do it all old school, sketch on paper. Um, People ask me where I get the Lego bricks. If I'm affiliated with a Lego company, which the answer is no, I'm not at all affiliated with a Lego company.
How do you get the I guess, how do you get the bricks when you come up with a design? You can't just go to the Lego store and go bin to bin pulling 10 pieces of this or 20 of that, or do you?
Sometimes, yeah. Since it hasn't been in recent years, I haven't been to Lego stores that frequently. So I mostly order them from third-party Lego resellers. There's a website called bricklink.com that is made up of thousands of shops, online shops that sell bulk Lego bricks. And many of these people that sell the bulk Lego bricks will go into a Target or a Walmart when there's a sale on a specific Lego kit, buy all of those Lego kits and separate all the parts and then sell the individual parts.
Oh wow.
So that's typically where I purchase all my materials from that website.
Okay. Um is do you have a favorite like Lego set or like kind of like theme, whether it's like the Harry Potter, Star Wars, or I don't know, Ninjago or whatever?
I don't. Again, Star Wars is what got me back into Lego, but I don't can't remember the last Lego kit I bought for myself. I haven't built a Lego kit in uh, like a decade, and I don't typically buy the Lego kits, so I'm not too familiar with them anymore. I typically, at this point, only buy the Lego shapes and colors that I need for a project. I keep a very low inventory of bricks. I still have over 100,000, a couple 100,000. But my goal is to keep that as low as possible because it's just money sitting. Um, and now and then I will, like, there are online inventories of each Lego kit. So if I'm in a pinch and I need a specific piece for a commission that I'm under deadline for, I will go to either the Lego store or to Target or something and buy a Lego kit just to get a couple pieces that I specifically need for that commission. And then the rest of the pieces will just go into a mixed bin. But yeah, so I don't consider myself a Lego fan as I was when I first got into Lego. For me, it's mostly just as a creative art form at this point. I do appreciate some of the kits that the Lego company's coming up with. They're very intricate and they're nothing like when we were kids. But yeah, it's for me, it's more a creative tool for me, to a creative medium to create my vision.
Yeah, I gotta say, like my kids, we've accumulated lots of different sets in the over the years, and I don't actually. I find it too complicated to kind of make things from scratch. Like we can have a bin of their stuff, but there's so many specialized pieces, and maybe it's just I can't play their video games either because it seems too complicated. So maybe it's just a generational thing or just being older. Um, but I I find it rather frustrating if I just kind of take a handful of Legos and say, okay, I'm going to build something. I'm like, I've got so many random things that do very specialized things, and I don't even know where to start.
That's a great point about Lego. If one were to
Mm.
look closely at my Lego creations, predominantly they are made from the Lego shapes that I had as a kid, which are the square bricks, square plates. I do use specialty pieces, specialty shapes, but many of those specialty shapes are beyond my comprehension, and I'm not familiar enough with them. One of the aspects of my work, which I think give my work a consistent look and feel. I've had more than one person tell me they can look at a Lego creation and know it was my work, which to me is the ultimate compliment. It's like looking at a painting and knowing it was Edward Hopper. Um, so it's I couldn't ask for a better compliment. But part of that is I think because of the Lego pieces that I use, my part selection. I typically use the same shapes over and over, and try to obviously make a distinct end product. I do have friends in the Lego realm. One in particular, I'd call him my best friend in the Lego world. He's from Chicago, and he understands, and he's younger than me, so it could be generational, but he fully understands the intricate Lego pieces, and the insides of some of his structures are just mind-boggling with what he has done with all of those specialty pieces to make the outside have the final beautiful appearance that it has. And I look inside, I look at his work, and my mind just gets scrambled. It's too much for me.
Yeah, it's, it's funny. Like how would you describe like what's when you look at like what you did with music and now what you do with Legos? Like what's the commonality that makes both of those art forms?
For me, it's taking what is up here, my ideas, my melodies, if it were music, my just my the buildings that I'm looking at. If I'm creating a building or a fire truck out of Lego bricks, it's taking whatever is up here and transforming it into the medium that I'm working with. So it's whether it's audible, if it's music, if I'm hearing a melody, or if it's something physical or visual, I would either make it out of Lego, or I could sculpt it or paint it or draw it or anything. Yeah, so I think it's just this innate need to create what is up in my head and what my creative aspect of my brain is doing. Um, Writing as well. I don't pursue writing, but I was always an excellent writer in school back in the day, and was really held in high regard with my stories, and aced all my writing classes.
And with Lego, like, I mean, when you talk about like art, like with music, it's not just like taking, I guess, the creation in your head, but the creation in your head inevitably reflects feelings as well. So, one of the things I was just wondering when you talk about Legos is how do you think your feelings get expressed in your Lego work? Is it the colors? Is it the subject matter? Is it the size? I mean, what's
I think it's with the Lego. I think it's color and texture. I typically don't use like if I typically don't like if I'm replicating a building or street scene or talking about those model train layouts that in my early days with Lego that I created in my Brooklyn apartment. They were all created not like a building, a brick building was not created with red Lego bricks. It was created with dark red Lego bricks and earth tone lintels and cornices. It was created with the more earth tone and gritty Lego colors. So it wasn't brightly colored red, the Lego colors that we grew up with, the bright green, the bright blue, bright yellow. Buildings weren't that I created were not made from that. So I think my feelings of using the darker color palette and more muted tones speak to my personality as well. And in music, it's the same thing. Typically contrasting that, typically with music, I play lovely melodies and love songs and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
it kind of it's a little bit of a contrast to the darker Lego colors that I use.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's really what speaks to my feelings and what's really in my soul. Not
Well.
that it's a dark soul. I'm not.
Uh,
That's not at all what I'm saying here. But more warm.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and it could be an outlet. I mean, who knows what it could be?
Yeah.
And being in San Diego, are you going to be doing any Padres works?
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're doing the work this year.
Yeah,
I'm a Yankees fan,
yeah,
but yeah, the Padres are doing the work for me this year. They're doing some exceptional stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I get that question a lot, and at this point, like, are you going to start creating? Like I did a New York book. Am I going to do a San Diego book? I doubt it. I don't know that San Diego book would have the appeal of a New York or a London, or a Paris um, book. But if someone wants to hire me at this point to create their building or their house
Hmm.
or something for their office, absolutely, I'd certainly build a San Diego structure or sculpture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could also. It would seem like also do different. You could do like a U.S. Like a version of your book to do different areas too. Like, yeah, is it more challenging to do like to depict a farm or a mountainscape versus like a building, a human construct that is built more like Legos?
I don't know if it would be more challenging. It would definitely take some time to wrap my head around, like with anything that I haven't done. Like right now, I'm working on 3 human busts, human heads and torsos. I've never done that before. I'm doing that for a client in Las Vegas. So if I'm doing something that I haven't done before, it does take some time to wrap my head around it and figure out how I'm going to approach it.
Yeah.
Um, the trick, yeah, a U.S. book would be phenomenal. I think
Yeah.
that would be, or something from the 50 states, with or one creation from each of the 50 states, or something like that would be really really cool.
Yeah, I see a book. I see a book opportunity and a television show, a YouTube series,
Yeah, yeah, a lot of that. Yeah, Lego Masters. Have you heard of that
the TV.
television?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, that is not for me.
I haven't watched it, but
Yeah, they asked me for the first season, and I had just gotten back from a Brick Universe tour. Like we did 6 shows in a row, and I declined, mostly because I was exhausted. But in hindsight, I'm glad I declined. There's actually a show in Brooklyn back in the day that somebody asked me to be part of. It showcased Brooklyn. It was a reality show and showcased Brooklyn based or New York City based small businesses, unique businesses. But yeah, I didn't have much interest in that either. Yeah.
Uh,
The introvert in me getting the better of me.
well, it sounds like you're doing plenty of extroverted stuff,
Yes, yeah,
despite that.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, I'm
well,
thrilled with what I'm able to do right now, and the my level of income and my quality of life. I'm really delighted with how everything's turned out and where I am right now um, in life with regard to business and income and quality of life at this point. But always and always will be a work in progress, as we talked about earlier.
yeah, great. Well, we have just passed the 1 hour mark, so we should probably move on. And I'm sure you've got some works to get going on. I'd like to finish the show by asking folks, like, what gives you hope at the end of the day?
I think what one of the things that gives me hope is just the knowledge that's out there. As long as we're all receptive to it, and the knowledge and information that we have access to, um, and it can be eye opening. And as long as we're open to, it comes down within each of us to being open to actually think about things differently with that knowledge. But the information that's out there, the reality that is out there, um, for me, that's hope. And for um, we just need to keep ourselves informed, and be real with ourselves, and hopefully that translates outward to others. And but I think the knowledge is out there. We just need to embrace it, and we have access to the knowledge. So I
Yeah,
think access and knowledge.
yeah, great. All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you for such a wonderful and unexpected and pretty novel conversation for me to have. And I mean, again, kudos to you for really living the dream in many respects.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you to our listeners. And may you go out and explore our great country with curiosity, respect, compassion, and humility.